It looks like Trump has made the biggest mistake of the entire trade war, and China saw it coming. While he's throwing threats left and right, Beijing has outmaneuvered him, and America's closest allies, Canada, Europe, and Japan, are furious. The G7 is fractured, and Trump's strategy is collapsing before our eyes. Just look at what happened. A few days ago, Trump boasted that Chinese goods would be hit with tariffs as high as 55%. But when both sides were supposed to meet to finalize a trade agreement, China abruptly pulled back. Scott Bessent was told directly, Beijing doesn't take any of this seriously. So what did the United States do? They quietly postponed the meeting and delayed the tariffs, because they know they can't handle this without China. But instead of regrouping and adjusting the plan, Trump lashed out at Canada with 35% tariffs, hit Switzerland with 39%, and even slapped Taiwan, his only real microchip partner, with 20%. He's punishing allies while sparing rivals. So where's the logic? This isn't strategy, it's chaos. He's disrupting trade, driving up prices, hurting American businesses, and alienating countries that used to stand with the United States. And what about China? China stays silent. It calmly waits and watches as Trump digs his own grave. The G7 is falling apart. US inflation is rising, jobs are at risk, and global supply chains are beginning to buckle. So who's really in control now? Let's break it down. Over the past few days, Trump and his team have set fire to the fragile system of global trade and walked away as if everything is going according to plan. The tariffs are back, and they're hitting hard. But America's allies are suffering the most. Europe was hit with 15% tariffs, part of what Trump calls a reset for fair trade. But there's nothing fair about it. Just look at the furious response from EU leaders. And Canada? 35% tariffs. No negotiations, no compromises, no explanations, just a blow. The official reason? Fentanyl. The United States claims it's being smuggled from Canada, but no one's buying it. It's just a convenient excuse. While Washington points fingers, others are bearing the real costs. And it's not just that Americans will have to pay more. Canadian and European companies are sinking, exporters are in panic, and for small businesses, this could be game over. What we're seeing now isn't economic policy, it's political pressure disguised as reform. Trump isn't using tariffs to protect American workers, he's using them to force allies into submission. This is no longer about numbers, it's about power. Meanwhile, China is playing a different game. While Trump postures and provokes, Beijing is analyzing every move like a seasoned strategist. No shouting, no rash statements, just patience, precision, and a clear plan. And it's working. While Canada begs for a European-style exemption, China quietly achieves what no one else could, a 90-day delay on new tariffs. And they didn't just get it, they negotiated for it. That shows how strong their position is, and how afraid Trump is of a total collapse in trade relations with Beijing. America does not depend on China just for cheap toys or electronics. China is at the core of the entire US consumer economy. According to the US Census Bureau, in 2024, China accounted for more than 16% of all American imports. That includes smartphones, clothing, medicine, everything essential for daily life. Even in the midst of a trade war, imports from China remain enormous. If shipments were suddenly cut off tomorrow, store shelves across America would be empty within weeks. And that's not an exaggeration, it's the reality of supply chains. Most American retailers, especially those operating in low-income areas, are deeply reliant on Chinese goods. For example, Walmart reports that roughly 60% of its entire inventory comes from China. Trump may appear confident in public, but his administration knows perfectly well, a serious disruption in trade with China would hit the US economy harder than any military threat. But China's greatest leverage is not in consumer goods, it lies in rare earth metals. These are critical elements used in electric vehicles, fighter jets, medical devices, and smartphones. And China controls nearly 70% of global rare earth production, and it has already hinted that access for the United States could be restricted at any moment. Back in 2010, when China cut exports to Japan, the country's entire tech sector nearly collapsed. If Beijing repeats that move with America now, it will not just be about trade, it will be a real economic blackout. While Trump lashes out at allies, China is making precise moves. One of the most powerful is the sale of US government bonds. In 2024 alone, China dumped over $100 billion in US debt. Every such move hits Washington and Wall Street hard. Why? Because the US government relies on debt sales. When major investors like China exit, interest rates rise, making loans more expensive not only for the government, but also for regular citizens, small businesses, and entire industries. And Trump understands this perfectly. Every bond sale is a message: push us too far, and we'll hit you where it hurts most: your dollar and your market credibility. And this isn't just a forecast, it's already happening. In June of 2025, the Federal Reserve was forced to intervene after China's bond sell-off triggered a spike in yields. That intervention drained liquidity from the markets and caused the Dow Jones to plunge by 600 points. This is no longer just a trade war, it has become a financial confrontation, and China is showing that it can strike just as hard without saying a single word. The global fracture can no longer be ignored. India, which once tried to avoid upsetting Washington, is now charting its own course. Despite US pressure, New Delhi continues to purchase cheap oil from Russia. According to India's Ministry of Commerce, in 2025 over 34% of its oil imports came from Russia, compared to just 2% before the war in Ukraine. The United States has already threatened sanctions and hinted at freezing military cooperation, but India is not backing down. They've done the math. Energy security matters more. To submit to America would mean harming their own economy more than helping diplomacy. Whether India will continue to hold the line remains to be seen, but the fact that it is resisting already shows that the global balance of power is shifting, and China has gone even further. It now openly ignores US sanctions against Russia and Iran, while simultaneously expanding trade with both countries. In just the first half of 2025, imports from Russia surged, largely due to oil and gas. At the same time, Beijing is gradually replacing the US dollar with the yuan in international transactions, and despite the threat of secondary sanctions, Chinese tankers continue docking at Iranian ports. While Washington calls for unity, China is building a new system where American pressure simply does not work. And here's the paradox: the more aggressive Trump becomes, the more isolated the United States becomes. His strategy was meant to corner China, but in the process, he is alienating America's own allies. European leaders are frustrated not just by the tariffs, but by the arrogance with which the US dictates terms. Canada is already buckling under 35% tariffs. The forestry sector, dairy industry, and auto manufacturing are all taking serious hits. According to Statistics Canada, exports to the United States are dropping sharply. And this is not just a temporary dip. These industries cannot simply pivot to new markets overnight. The damage will be long-lasting. Meanwhile, China is filling the void. As the Western alliance weakens, Beijing is signing new trade deals, expanding energy partnerships, and strengthening its influence across Africa, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. And now everything comes down to a single question: will the United States realize that they've walked into a trap before everything falls apart completely? Or will they keep picking fights they are not ready for? But it doesn't stop there. Trump's approach has exposed another dangerous trait. His strategy is not about uniting allies, it is about dividing them. The G7 no longer looks like a unified team. It resembles more a chaotic scramble, with each country trying to avoid punishment. Canada was hit with 35% tariffs, Thailand 19%, Taiwan 20%, Switzerland an astonishing 39%. There's no logic in these numbers, only one message: loyalty means nothing if you don't pay. America's allies are paying twice, first by buying US government bonds, and then again when their exports are struck down by US trade policy. And even then, they try to cushion the blow for Washington, only to get hit even harder in return. It's a closed loop, possible only in today's fragmented global order, where support looks like surrender and economic cooperation turns into financial pain. And while the US sinks deeper into tariffs, the BRICS countries are quietly but steadily gaining momentum. They are offering what Washington no longer can: stability, scale, and a sense of fairness. Countries burned by US policy are turning toward BRICS, accelerating a global shift that once would have taken decades. Now, it's happening in just a few years. Thanks to Trump, countries like India, China, Brazil, and Indonesia are quickly becoming new trade hubs. While the US uses trade as a weapon, BRICS is opening its doors. And instead of isolating China, Trump's strategy has achieved the opposite. It has strengthened Beijing's position. Global trade isn't dying, it is simply changing course dramatically. But what's happening inside the US itself? Total chaos. Trump's customs system is a mess. The rules are so convoluted that exporting from the US now feels like trying to decode a tax law written in a panic. A 40% penalty just because a shipment passed through the wrong route. No one understands how to operate under these conditions, and the exceptions to the rules appear and vanish without warning. Everything is inconsistent and murky, and this confusion isn't just frustrating, it's harmful. The United States is starting to look like an unreliable trading partner. Companies are pulling out not because they want to, but because they cannot function in an environment where rules change overnight and the referee is also the judge. On paper, America still seems strong, but politically, it is becoming increasingly isolated. If this continues, the US will lose its global leadership not because someone else was stronger, but because it backed itself into a corner. And we're watching it happen in real time. So if you want to stay informed about these global changes, subscribe to the channel and follow the updates.